In this video, we're going to derive the product rule just a bit more formally. We've got h of t as the product f of t times g of t. And for h prime of t, we're going to use delta notation. So remember that h prime of t is approximately equal to delta h over delta t. And then to make this exact, we're ultimately going to want to take a limit as delta t goes to 0. So let's look at this numerator. What is delta h? Well, it's the change in h, so there's a new h, and we subtract the old h. But what does that mean? Well, h has changed because f and g have changed. H is always f times g, so the new h should be the new f, and that's our original f, plus the change in f, delta f, times the new g. So that's the original g plus the change in g. And this product then is the new h. And we subtract the old h, which is just the original f times g. We can visualize all of that with the rectangle picture. H equals f times g, like this. And our new h is the area of a new rectangle. The width changes by delta f, and the height changes by delta g. And then the new h is the area of this new rectangle, and that's f plus delta f times g plus delta g. And then in this picture, delta h, the change in area, that's everything in this region right here. But notice one thing. In this picture, we're kind of assuming that all of these quantities are positive, so f, delta f, etc. With the algebra, there's no such assumption. So the algebra is more general and more formal. The picture is just here to help us get an intuition about all of these terms. Back to the algebra then. If we multiply this out, we're going to get f times g plus f times delta g plus g times delta f plus delta f times delta g. And then we subtract f times g. So these things cancel, and we're left with f times delta g plus g times delta f plus delta f times delta g. Now, this is supposed to be delta h, and in fact we can see in the picture where all three of these terms come from. F times delta g, that's this area right here. G times delta f is this part of the delta h, and delta f times delta g, that's this section up in the corner. If you are worried that we missed this corner piece in the last video about the product rule, don't worry. The algebra sees it, and the algebra will tell us that it really isn't a problem. All right, we've got our delta h, and we're supposed to divide that by delta t. And I'm going to write this in a form that's suggestive. So when we divide this first term by delta t, we're going to get f times delta g over delta t. Then for the next term, we'll put g times delta f over delta t. And the last term, I'm going to do something funny here. We've got delta f over delta t. That's our dividing by delta t. And then I'm going to put delta g over delta t again. And then that's an extra delta t in the denominator, so I have to multiply by delta t. So that's how I'm going to write that. And now remember, we're supposed to take the limit as delta t goes to 0. And we're going to do that to all of these terms. And in the first one, well, we've got f, that stays the same. But what's going on with delta g over delta t as delta t goes to 0? Well, that's just the definition of the derivative. That's g prime. We're assuming that g is differentiable here. And in the next term, we'll get g times, and then this quotient, well, that approaches f prime as delta t approaches 0. And finally, in the last term, Well, the first part, that's going to go to f prime. And the second part goes to g prime. But the last part, well, that's just delta t itself, which is going to 0. So in the limit, this last term just disappears. It's 0. And we're left with f times g prime plus g times f prime. Hey, that's our product rule.